Listen, laugh, and learn with Sacha and Ish as they share their experiences, thoughts, and tips to build skills that are not so average and a career that's not so ordinary. This is the Not So Breakfast Show.
All right, welcome to the Not So Breakfast Show today, the podcast for leadership and career development. And today, exciting because she's back. It's Julia Grace back again. And we're really looking forward to having a chat to her because it feels like your career has just been blowing up, from books to speaking engagements to being the president of the Professional Speakers Association in New Zealand. Everything seems to be Julia Grace in my social feed at the moment, which is fantastic. So very much looking forward to catching up. And Sacha, also welcome back from Fiji. You're looking tanned.
I am going so well. You're not allowed to complain when you've just come back from a week in Fiji. However, I've always been a bit of a rule breaker, so here I go. We went to Fiji with my extended family, so mum and dad, my sister and her kids, and it was amazing. What a privilege to have everybody together. First time the young cousins had come to Fiji. Yay, this is awesome. And because it's the Olympics, we had Olympics on the beach. And, you know, our family in particular, my family, my husband, my children, we're incredibly competitive. And I am the least athletic amongst us. So I knew I had to give it my guts in the Olympics, which I did. But in the 40-yard dash, I fell over. And my dad makes YouTube videos for our family holidays. So you can see me fall over every which way from 4 different angles in slow motion. And no one wants to hear my complaints. I've got grazes all over my knees, all up my arms, on my feet. So I'm like, it was wonderful, but everything hurts a little bit. I pulled a muscle or 2 or 3, so I couldn't walk for the next day. It was all a bit much. So I'm delighted to be back. I've had an amazing holiday, and I'm interested. It's going to be so great to hear from you, Julia Grace, because I was doing this for my well-being, but it's exercise, they say, it'll be good for you. I'm like, was that the right thing to do?
Yes. It's so funny when things don't quite work out. I've just been running a 3-day leadership offsite. It went really well and I was all charged up and was going to go home and just relax and switch off for a couple of days. And I got in and my oldest daughter's got COVID and then my youngest daughter's ripped the front off the car.
Welcome home.
I was just going to unwind now, but life goes on. And man, it is really good to have you back, Julia. We know you're a singer-songwriter. We know you've had a huge amount of success in a number of different things, but it does feel recently that your speaking career has literally just taken off. Every time I'm in Instagram, it's like you're speaking at another event. So maybe as a bit of a starter, do you want to give us a recap into who you are, what you do, and then we'd love to explore the book and your speaking.
Sure, yeah. So I've come into this world. I'm a mental health keynote speaker and educator, and I've come in from sort of a three braided avenue. So I've come from my education side. I was a teacher for 32 years full-time and then part-time for many years. So education is right in my DNA. Came from the entertainment space. I've recorded 4 studio albums. I have, I think behind me you can probably see my TUI award back there. And so that space of being on stage around the world, singing, storytelling, teaching. And then the third kind of part of the braid was my lived experience with depression and anxiety. So I live with a diagnosis of depression and anxiety, and the 3 of those experiences have really crystallized together to create the thing that I talk about now, which is Be Kind to Your Mind. So yeah, I'm a professional speaker. I speak to a huge range of clients. People say pick a niche. I picked a field instead of a niche. So therefore, it could be a retirement village one day and a kindergarten the next day. It could be all over the place. Could be a huge corporate conference and then a women's event. And I love the variety that brings, because I think everybody deserves to have better mental health. So as part of that, have written and published my book this year. And exponentially growing, I think, through demand, but also through the fact that preparation meets opportunity, and the time is now.
Yeah. And what I've loved about reading through your book is, I've heard you speak so many times. And when I read your book, I can literally hear your voice coming off the page. In fact, I was reading through it, and it'll just get to the part that go, oh, I know the story she's about to tell, And so it really does feel like you. It really does feel like you've emptied everything that you put out on stage on the page for you. And how has the response to the book been?
Amazing, actually. And sometimes I look at it and I just think, gosh, I made that. Where did that happen? And it feels like it was sort of sudden, but it was 6 years in the writing. And it was a long period of creating small pieces. I sort of wrote certain parts at times and certain parts at other times. And then I knew how I wanted it to kind of be bookended, and I knew the format I wanted it to take. So every second chapter is a workbook. It's called the Chihuahua Club, because I talk about getting knocked off my high horse, getting back on progressively smaller horses, and now I'm saddling up a Chihuahua. So anybody else who has found themselves flat on their face, Sacha, I'm looking at you.
I'm laughing.
Anyone who's hit the sand running knows that experience when things seem to be going great, and then next minute you're just lying on the ground and somebody's putting you on YouTube and we're all dying of embarrassment. And I feel like that has kind of struck a chord, because the people who have been knocked off their high horse and have got back up, brushed ourselves off, kind of gone, rolled our eyes, and perhaps kept going in maybe a different way, shape or form, have really resonated with it.
I know that I hear you talk about this when you were speaking, but your incredibly rude friend that really did kind of call you out, looked past all of the, as you say, the slap-on sunscreen, the waterproof mascara, all of that kind of stuff, and really kind of looked into you and said, something's not right. Can we talk about that? Maybe can you reflect back on that experience and just give a little bit of context to why that was such a massive moment?
Yeah. So I was in that space between being quite mentally unwell, but before I had really acknowledged that, almost before I'd noticed what it was. And I think we all have these gaps in our experience. We might start to feel I was heartbroken and, very sad. And that makes a lot of sense. And one of the things that we're looking for with mental health challenges is severity, impact, and duration. So how severe is it? How much is it impacting on your everyday life, and how long is it going on for? And so sometimes something like grief or heartbreak, it will be very severe and highly impactful, but it won't go on forever and ever. And so in a few sort of, weeks or days, we'll start to feel like the sun is shining a bit. And what I was noticing is that was really beginning to drag on, and other people started to notice. So my friend took me out for coffee, and as you said there, Ish, I put on my war paint, I put on my makeup, I put on my high heels and my red dress, and I thought I was doing such a great job of masking. And I sat down with my friend, and he's British, and he doesn't have that Kiwi filter where we're all, tiptoeing around. And he just looked me in the eye and goes, "You don't look well." And I was like, "Mate, you can't say that," and he just really eyeballed me, and he said, "You need to go to the doctor." And I was deeply confronted, and I was, equal parts trying to pick my jaw up off the floor. But I've said to him later on, "I'm so glad that you're so rude, that you just came straight to the point." And he said to me, "No one's going out on my watch. If there's something I can do or say to help you, sometimes you could save a life just by being the one person who's kind of brave enough to just say it how it is." So that was my rude friend. That's why I think he's awesome, and that's why I encourage other people to have those conversations, even when they're difficult, but particularly on the easy days, so that on the tough days, they're already sort of set in place.
Yeah.
It's one of the joys and also the challenges of when we podcast, obviously, with people who are as articulate as you, Julie Grace, or who are as sort of speakerish as you are, because then when you finish a sentence, it's just always perfect. So it's like, oh, we can just put music there. That's good.
The voice on my shoulder is going, "Wrap it up, wrap it up."
Yeah, right. Whereas lots of time people finish and it's like, you haven't said anything, we'd better ask another question. So it's like, if we're just sitting here like stunned mullets because we're going, oh, I forgot. Sorry, I literally forgot that we were doing a podcast and I was just listening to you. Sorry. I forgot I have a role here. Sorry, Ash. Ash is looking at me and I'm like, what? I'm just listening. Sorry. Okay, back to the podcast now. I forget.
My problem is that I could do 3 hours straight without stopping. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same, but it's also why I just so enjoy it when it happens the other way. I'm like, oh, this is good. Oh, no, right, me, sorry. Sorry, Ash, right, I'm back in this being able to be of assistance. Good, I'll stop just listening like as the audience.
We'll be right back.
If there was one skill that could double your income, advance your career, and increase your ability to influence, it is the skill of presenting. Whether it's on stage, in the boardroom, or at a job interview, the 30-minute presenter program will help take you to the next level. So check out our Instagram page, click the link in the bio, and get started on the 30-minute presenter program. One of the things that I've noticed even with my own mental health is when I was younger, you go through stages where things aren't quite right because you don't really have the tools probably when you're a bit younger, but then you get some tools and they just serve you for a while. But I've just noticed as I've got older that the problems get bigger and the tools that I had originally just don't seem to work as well as they used to. And I was speaking to a counsellor a little while ago, and she basically said exactly that. You know, your coping mechanism will get to a point where it's like it served you. And now that specific tactic is no longer practical, or it's you need to learn something else. And I guess that's the thing that I'm starting to piece together is you never really know it all. And like you said, it is a journey and some days are harder than others. But as you go through those, if you don't have someone to talk to or someone to maybe get advice from, you might just feel that you're not coping. But it could just be you've got the wrong tool and you get a new tool and you get more coping strategy.
Absolutely. And, you know, if you're trying to use a hammer for what is a screwdriver's job, you're going to get really frustrated at the hammer and think it's useless. Actually, it's just trying to do the wrong thing. And yeah, I completely agree with you there. And there's been a lot of research into the sense that in midlife and in older adulthood, the structures that we've built that have sort of stood us, they've done okay. And some of those are maladaptive practices. You know, some of us have dived into toxic relationships or, you know, substances that aren't helpful and practices and things that we think it just makes it okay for today and tomorrow. But I think as we get older, we realize that today and tomorrow is not all there is. We've also got to think about what the impact's going to be on us, you know, next year and the year after. I think one of the challenges that our generation has had is more of the not feeling that sense of permission to actually prioritize our well-being.
Yeah.
That somehow a hero is someone who, do you remember the Soldier On with Codral? Soldier On, you know, there was an ad that literally said, when you're sick, don't stay home. Like, just keep working. And, you know, we'll realize that going to the office and coughing and spluttering on everyone is not great practice. And in the same way, just pushing through, come on, mate, keep on going. It worked for today and it might work for tomorrow, but it's not a long-term result.
One of the interesting things as I reflect on my own transition is not so much around I'm not a substance abuser. I don't feel like I do things like I'm not in toxic relationships or what have you. But as you raise your family, many of us as women come second or third or fourth in terms of priority. And other people have differences of opinions to me. But my opinion is that served our family really well. Someone has to be second or third or fourth on the list, right? We can't all be number one on the list all of the time. And I think it alternates in the family who needs us right now, and that's where our support goes. But generally, not all women, but I'm an example of a woman who has a huge bandwidth of capacity to cope, or to, you know, suck it up, or to be the bigger person, or to be with the child who's angry and I can sit and calm. And so all of those tools that you talk about that enable you to function and cope and to be a healthy, functioning adult and parent and all of those things, they necessarily involve a displacement of self to a certain extent, right? So, because if anyone says to me, what do you most want to do right now? The answer is never the laundry.
Yeah.
The answer is never continue to do the dishes or help this child with their assignment that they've left till the last minute because I fucking told them that all of that stuff. But I think if we're not careful, like my children are adults now, Portia's 19, I am struggling with this transition to being more selfish about what I want. And so part of my mental health challenge or a wellness challenge is to say, what do you even like? Because when the question is, what do you want for dinner? I'm like, this is an excellent question. Because it's not usually about what I want for dinner. And so there's a kind of it's a quite an unnerving and unsettling process of self-discovery to go, well, I'm 51 and I can choose what I want. Today I said I text my husband, what should we have for dinner? And he said, you choose. And I'm like,
That's such a poignant point, Sacha, because I think what we've often chosen is also the path of least resistance, where we just go, it's actually easier to go with what does everyone else want, because if the thing I pick, then these other kids don't want, then suddenly we're going to have whinging and complaining. And so a path where we insist on our own, I want this, can actually be more annoying. But once you start to take away those other voices, and I often find this with adults, it's into our 50s, unwrapping, what do I like? What would I watch if nobody else had a say? What would my Netflix algorithm look like? And I had this moment actually a number of years ago. I was in the car with the kids, and back in the day, do you remember when we had like 6 CD stackers in the car?
Yeah, the stack of 6.
Did you have those? Yeah. Was I just super fancy? I don't know. We had like one where you could stack in the car. I thought we were so cool. And I remember getting in the car, and my kids were into sort of early teenage years, and one by one they took over the CDs in the car, and it was kind of like one became Taylor Swift, Justin Bieber, One Direction. It was around that sort of time, and it was almost like the first 3 I was like, I'm kind of okay with this, and then one day I got in the car and all 6 CDs were literally teenage music, and I hit the road. I was like, this is my car, this is my, and I remember my kids being kind of confused, going, Mum, I thought you liked Taylor Swift. And I was like, I don't dislike Taylor Swift.
Well, that's good, because this podcast will get cancelled if you say bad things about her.
My own devices. I wouldn't pick 60.
Yeah.
And I think it's almost like the tide has turned, And so I spoke at a women's event about this, and a lady got home and she messaged me later. She goes, "I've taken back my power. I own the auxiliary cord in my car. It's my car. It's my music. And so I think we can handle a certain amount, and we don't mind handling a certain amount, and then all of a sudden that tipping point comes, and we go, hey, what about me? And then we're stuck with, what am I going to change that to? So actually knowing what it is that we do like and the things that do bring us joy is almost a rediscovery process in midlife, I guess.
With writing the book, how does someone who has a diagnosis around, anxiety and depression and who struggles with that and as busy as you write a book? Like, how do you fit that in? And how did you find the process and journey of actually doing that?
Yeah, it was called my husband's gentle needling and pressure. I think it's such an on and off thing. Now, I've heard of these amazing people that are so disciplined. They sit down and go, I'm going to smash out a book in 6 weeks or something, and every week, every day they get up. I am not one of those people. I am a creative. I'm a musician. I'm an artist. I do really great work at 2 a.m. and then don't want to get up in the morning. And so for me, it was very much striking while the iron was hot. When I had an idea, getting time to do that. And then there was also that point of actually just getting it done. And we did. My husband Michael and I went away for a week, and we went to stay in Okune, which at the time there wasn't much snow, and basically stayed in our beautiful friend's chalet. I went upstairs and kind of wasn't allowed downstairs. He just kind of brought me food and champagne and just sort of kept feeding me and bringing me drinks. And I just literally put my headphones on. sat down cross-legged on the bed and just smashed out a huge amount of writing. And what I found was when I could get into the flow, I could start to get that done. And when we stopped, it was very hard to restart, but I kind of had to do that again. Had to go away on a writing retreat, declare to the universe, declare to my Facebook and Instagram, this is what I'm doing, so people would hold me accountable. And at some level, I had to then say, I'm going to get this done by this date. To be fair, it probably ended up being released maybe 10 months after that date because I was very naive as to how long that process would take. Somebody said to me the year before, book a release party, like just book a venue. I didn't go quite so far as to book a venue, but the concept being was like, if you've done something, it's going to force it's going to force your hand back to get it done. And so by starting to see a bit of progress, it helped me to, I guess, keep going with that.
I love seeing the photo of it on the shelf next to Brené Brown's book, and I'm reading it on Kindle.
Oh, yay!
Which I'm quite surprised actually, because I think I was a little bit like Sacha. If I'm going to read it, I want to touch it, I want to feel it, and then Joe brought a Kindle, and honestly, it has been the best thing in my life ever. Because for some reason, I can read the Kindle for ages, but when I open a book at night and I'm like 1 page, 2 page out. Whereas with the Kindle, I can actually go. Must be something to do with my brain.
I have a theory.
Yeah, what's your theory, Sash?
Separate to the technology of the light, my theory is on the Kindle, you're not going to be focusing on that you're page 5 out of 400. It's just a page.
Yeah.
There's another page. Oh, there's another page. I can do another page. With a book, you know exactly how long you've got to go. And if that feels daunting, it's like being able to see how far you're running.
Yeah.
It's like you can probably run better if you go like this. Oh, podcasting. If you go in a wiggly line than if you just like see a long road in front of you.
Yes.
Maybe. I love the title, Be Kind to Your Mind. And it staggers me. And maybe other people have used that before, but it's so beautiful and it rhymes and it's catchy and yay, good for you and coming up with that. Has it always been a thought of yours, the idea of kindness and the approach to yourself?
Yeah. So I came up with the slogan as the slogan for my work a number of years ago. And what I loved about it, was I love the rhyming and the rhythm of it, but also the sense that the best thing that I've done is actually by learning more about my mind and my brain and my body, I've been able to almost forgive it for some of the things that it's just doing to keep me safe. A lot of our mental health challenges and a lot of the things that happen feel scary and they feel overwhelming, and people talk about feeling highly anxious or in a depressive dip and feeling burnout and those things. A lot of that is just our body giving us data. It's our body trying to keep us safe. It's our brain trying to keep us alive. And one of the things I love to do is almost with audiences and with readers is to help them to make friends with their brain again. And rather than dissociation of like, oh, my head's it's like all over the place, actually going, look, it's working really hard. Isn't it wonderful that our body is signaling to us, even though the signals might not feel great at the moment, just learning a little bit more about it. So I like that kindness. It's almost permission giving, embracing, thanking, sending people away feeling a bit more positive about what's going on in their body, even when it doesn't feel great.
I think one of it blows your mind, and I'm not meaning to be kind of facetious by talking about mind, is when you are able to separate yourself from your mind. So you observe your thinking or you observe your feelings. So rather than saying I am sad, you go, oh, I'm experiencing feelings of sadness, or I notice sadness in my thinking or sadness in my heart. But then if you go, I notice myself noticing the sadness. Oh, no, but I'm back here noticing myself, and then you kind of get into a really existential question, which is like, who am I separate to my mind and my body? Because there's always one more layer of observation. But even though that seems kind of Monty Python-esque, what that teaches us, which I think is ironic, and I wrestle with this, I'm interested in your opinion on this, because I've written this down as a question for you. It teaches us to almost not trust ourselves. And I don't mean not to trust our instinct, but to not accept everything that our brain tells us about ourselves as being true. And how do we grapple with that? So let me give you a tangible example. I had a thought this morning where I thought, oh, you're just getting a bit old for this. That was a thought I had. And then I immediately went, hang on a minute, you're actually just come off a week of being quite sick. So you're at like 60% energy. So now's not the time to be evaluating whether you are too old or not too old for this particular thing. Recognize that this is just a thought that is a response to you're not very tired. So I don't want people to not trust their instinct, but to kind of not always believe the first thought you have in the morning. Can you comment on that?
I love, it's really great example. So what you're talking about is executive functioning, and it's the thinking about thinking. And it's one of the best things that we can teach our children, and also what we're teaching our older adults as they come down to that phase of life, is to continue to think about thinking. And these are things like, problem solving, logic, philosophy, all those things that take one step back and have us thinking about what's going on in the moment. And I think what you're saying there is that first reaction is a real feeling. So we're not saying, no, Sacha, that's absolute rubbish. How could you, that's not true. We're not delusional. You know, there's people that get up and go, I'm not sick. And you're like, well, actually, I can see the blood coming out of your head. You are. It is true. So we're not talking about delusional thinking or pretending. I'm not into superstition. But what we're thinking about is, what does that mean? And the next step. So the feeling that, oh my gosh, I'm a bit old for this, is really valid, and actually probably was to do with the fact that maybe you're tired, maybe all those scrapes and bruises from hurting, and they probably hurt more than they used to.
Yeah.
When you're a kid, we always had raised knees, and now an adult, it's like when you get a bee sting, it's like, this really hurts. So it makes sense that you would have that feeling. So I don't think you're denying it, and I don't think you're ignoring that gut reaction. But what you're doing is then you're taking that next step and you're being the kind voice to it. So you're saying, oh, Sacha, look, you know what? It makes perfect sense that you would feel that way. And then the evaluation is, what does that mean for what I do next? Because sometimes the answer will be, actually, I am. Sometimes we are putting ourselves under too much pressure, and we do need to step out and go, I don't need to be in charge of this club or doing this job, or, we need to have good boundaries. I don't need to put up with this stuff. So sometimes we do need to be able to have those tough conversations. But I think by taking that step back, we can at least then have a little bit of time and space. So I have a thing called feel it, face it, forget it. And in the moment when we have those feelings, it does not feel pleasant. It's like a little fire burning inside where we're like, oh my gosh, this is all too much or whatever. And then the next step in that is to really do, what can I do to mitigate? Are there things I need to put in place? Do I need to change my timetable? Can I bring somebody else into kōrero with me to say, hey, you know me, am I taking on too much, or am I, maybe our partners or our family? And then once we have done all we can to some level, having a little bit of a Teflon coating and being able to let some things go. And it doesn't mean facetiously like, oh, well, I've hurt somebody, so forget it. It means I've done what I can. I've apologized. I've tried to make it right. And at some level, life is short. And how long am I going to hang on to this? There's a difference between having something for a little snack and turning it into the meal you eat all day, every day. And I get people doing whatever. For the podcasters there, it goes with a West Auckland hand signal and a little bit of whatever, just to go, you know what, there is a level of, I'm going to let this Teflon slide and I'm actually going to move on from the situation.
Yeah, I love it.
Cool. So what are some of the practices that you have in place to help with your workload? Because I know you're on a cruise ship sometimes. You just were on a call just before you did the podcast. I'm assuming there's been several speaking gigs often going on in the background over the days. What are the ways that you recharge and what's working for you at the moment?
So one of the things that we've put in place recently is building team. And so I've brought my husband on board on my team to just help support that load. I've got another employee who works on the technical side, and then another one now who's working on bookings and management. And by having those people around me, what it's done is sort of just pull some of the thinking out of my head, so I don't have to feel like I'm balancing everything. Because I don't know about you guys, will both be highly, creative and capable people. People always, oh, you should do this, you should do that. And I'm like, oh, stop giving me work, because everyone's got a good idea. You should write a book, you think, oh, God, another job. So it's helped me to be able to go, that's a great idea. How about we get Michael to do that? And be able to bring some of that stuff out. The flip side of that is running your own business can end up being 24/7 if you're not careful, because we love what we do. It's not just a job, it's a passion. I mean, I love the fun of it. I love being on stage, but I love the results that it brings in people's life. We're bringing change to people's life. And so it's very tempting to stay on that mission 24/7. So actually to come back and go, I don't have a normal weekend, because often a weekend it could be a gig, or, I don't often have 2 days off. So when we have a day off, we've got to go, this is a day off, literally. And so trying to find some things to do, we've just joined BFT, which is the...
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Are you proud of me, Ish?
No, I am proud of you.
Amazing.
I'm absolutely dying here, but physically, but mentally, my gosh, the mental focus, and it's reminded me again the value of physical movement and fitness. And I've taken up this little saying, my fitness is my business. And actually, to grow my business, I have to be physically fit, and I just have to kind of put my big girl's pants on and do that. So improving my physical fitness has had a massive bearing on looking after my well-being. The other things is I don't drink enough water, and I hate going to bed on time. I find I work out hard, I get thirstier, and I get tireder. So I call that a high bucket habit. It's like that, the Cuba Street fountain. There's a fountain in New Zealand where the one bucket at the top fills and it drips down into the next bucket, which fills the next bucket. And I'm always looking for, how can I fill the top bucket with a habit that means the other ones are easier. So rather than coming up with 10 things, I think, oh, I've got to do all these things. I think, what one thing can I do? And so for me, the gym has created good practice in some other things that have helped. And so I'm really lazy. So I think that is a great idea. So I do challenge people to think of some ways to cluster or to clump those things together. I have amazing friends, and I just try and keep up with them. When you travel a lot, that can be hard because you're often out, when everyone else is meeting up or doing stuff, but actually being quite diligent and saying, hey, look, I'm going to once a month make sure we get together and spend time together. And actually, I think, Sacha, that really resonated with me, what you said before, that putting time for yourself and going, my self-care time actually helps everybody else. Because when I do come to the table, when I am at the dinner or I am at the event or I am speaking to an audience, I bring a better me to the table when I've had that time out.
Yeah.
It's not selfish, it's self-full. It's like it's necessary. I was laughing because when you're saying people come to you with ideas, I was in Brazil not that long ago with a friend of mine who has some amazing projects that he's trying to get off the ground, and some he has got off the ground. But every person we'd meet with, they would share something, and he'd go, well, why don't you? And so after about 4 times when he was like, why don't you? I just turned to him and I said, why don't you? So I've taken that on board now. So when people say to me, you should write another book, I just go, you should. Like, stop. I'm not the vessel for do your own shit. Put onto me.
You went, I love that for you.
Yeah.
One of my friends says, because people go, oh, you should do this, should do that. She goes, you're just shitting all over yourself. And it's just all the things that you feel like you should be doing.
Yeah.
And then actually going, that just sounds like a lot of hard work. So picking out of those, which ones are for you and which ones I'm going to use that. I love that.
Yeah. Oh, I love that idea for you.
Good. Yeah, that is so cool. And look, thank you so much for your time today. I know you are immensely busy, and coming back second time for us means so much. We have loved seeing your career grow, your speaking talent. I mean, I'm always a blubbering mess whenever I see you live. So I would love to be able to add your song to the end of this podcast, and if we can do that again, that would be great. So definitely stay on and listen to that. But yeah, thank you so much for writing the book, and thank you for continuing to speak and inspire people, because what you do, it's just so real. There's something about the way you connect with people that is quite unique, and yeah, it's special. So yeah, just thank you so much. But if people do want to connect with you, get your book and book you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, just straight onto the website, juliagrace.co.nz. We've got copies of the book available there. We've got them in ebook. We've got them in paperback as well. They are in libraries and Whitcoulls and in some Paper Plus stores. And then on there's always blogs and information, and my social media has a real mixture of what I'm doing, but also input so people can share that. And yeah, for bookings, just come on. I just love to, like I said, just there's so many spaces that I just love to be able to speak into and just support people in their mental health practice, and would love to see you.
This song is for the girl on the kitchen floor. I'm so grateful that I'm not her anymore, but I never will forget how she cried there on the concrete every night. This song is for the girl who had given up hope, who had watched her dreams and promises go up in smoke as she faced the bitter knowledge there was no more comfort in sight. I wanna tell that girl that life will be beautiful again. I wanna tell that girl that her days will be full of love again. And I've got miles and miles to go, but in my heart of hearts I know there is so much left to live for. Girl on the kitchen floor. This song is for the girl with a tear-stained face, who, in the face of tragedy, hung on to her faith like a lifeline in the tempest. Was all she had the energy to do. This song is for the heart who was shattered and torn, who are living in the darkest hour just before the dawn. Hold on, better days are coming. I wanna tell that girl that life will be beautiful again. I wanna tell that girl that her days will be full of love again. And I've got miles and miles to go, but in my heart of hearts I know there is so much left to live for.